Today, I would like to play for you one of the most beautiful yet trickiest pieces in my repertoire. But first, let me tell you how I ended up with it, because this is without exaggeration the stupidest thing I've ever done. Albert Einstein was far more confident in the infinity of human stupidity than in that of the universe, and I'm a living proof of it. In fact, it's so far beyond conventional stupidity that I'm almost not ashamed of it. It feels like an achievement of sorts. And paradoxically, this facepalm-worthy idiocy of mine ended up helping me reconnect with an important part of myself recently. So ultimately, this story is about self-discovery and inner growth. So let's get to it. Almost 20 years ago, when I was a teenager who just escaped my provincial hometown in Ukraine for the suburbs of Kyiv, which to me then seemed as cool as Manhattan, I decided to enter one of my first adult competitions in Valencia, in Spain. It was mandatory to prepare a Spanish piece, of course. This was a very ancient time, almost 20 years ago, so most dinosaurs were already extinct, but YouTube and Spotify, as we know them, were still not accessible. I even remember burning CDs myself to build my own music library between hunting beasts, not those ones, these ones, and practicing piano. I didn't know much Spanish music at that age, and of course I was too lazy to walk to the library and sight-read through a bunch of scores to find a piece myself. So I did exactly what my lazy students do nowadays, so perhaps I shouldn't blame them too much for this. I went to my teacher and I asked, "Oh, maestro, could you suggest a Spanish piece I could learn?" We were at his home. He had a beautiful old Bechstein grand piano, but on top of it, he had what every true artist has, a huge mess. Scores, books, electricity bills, pizza leftovers, piles of crap, you name it. So he said to me, "Well, I think Triana by Albéniz could be a good match for you." "And wait a moment," he said, "I think I have the score somewhere," and he started to look through that mess on his grand piano. It was a really long moment, and by the time we both had aged into gray-bearded men, he finally found it, a poorly copied stack of loose pages with the word Triana on the front. So, barely glancing at the score, he handed it to me and the matter was settled. I was in a rush. There was just over a month left before the competition. Without bothering to examine the score or even check the tempo marking, at that point I didn't care whether it's presto or allegretto. I just knew that the piece is fast, and I just began learning the notes. I quickly memorized the first page and never looked at it again, which is kind of crucial for the story. While learning it, I was surprised. Wow, I thought to myself, who would have thought that Albéniz was such a hard composer? The piece turned out to be brutal. But I was insanely determined and I nailed it. So 3 weeks later, I was ready. I had this rule I'd invented for myself at that age. I'd only go to a lesson when I could play a piece fully memorized and as concert-ready as I could manage. And by then, I could already manage quite a lot, actually. So less than 2 weeks before the competition, I came to my lesson and I played the piece all the way through for the first time. My teacher, who probably hadn't heard this piece in a long time himself, seemed a little puzzled, so he said to me, "It doesn't sound exactly the way I remember it. Actually, you know, Denis, it reminds me of those crazy Godowsky transcriptions." And that name rang a bell somewhere in the back of my mind. A nasty suspicion crept in. So I took the score and for the first time examined the first page really closely. Triana by Albéniz, so far so good. But below that it said, arranged by Leopold Godowsky. My English at that time sucked even more than it does now, so at first I was in a denial. Oh, maybe it just means it's an edition by Godowsky, like, you know, Bach edition by Mugelini, where the notes are the same and he just adds some slurs and fingering, some minor stuff, so maybe it's not a big deal. But comparing it to the original, of course, crushed me completely. It was clearly a different piece. No wonder it was hard to learn, because Godowsky transcription had like 5 times more notes than the original, which was already very challenging. So What now? Every option seemed shittier than the last. Of course, I could learn the original, but it would be too fresh to perform at a competition in less than 2 weeks, and I'd risk compromising the rest of the 2-hour program I also needed to prepare, so it wasn't realistic. I could cancel my trip and lose all the money I already spent on tickets, etc. And I was very poor at that point. The only way I could go abroad to a competition was if some sponsor gave me a couple $100 for travel and instant noodles. I knew I wouldn't get another chance to visit Spain for a long time, and I wanted it so badly. I didn't yet know how fun it will be to drink a dozen kinds of Rioja at a wine tasting in a huge tropical garden inside of a bloody train station. But I felt I had to go to Spain. Rioja was calling my spirit, so canceling the trip was out of the question. And I'm so happy I didn't back down. I could of course approach the competition committee and honestly say, you know guys, I had learned a transcription instead of the original, but I knew that the chances were high they'd just reject me and forbid me to play at all. So there was only one option left, as crappy as the others, but at least it promised some more fun. I went to the competition, passed to the second round quite easily because my program was in a top shape, gave a quite brilliant performance for my age of the 𝘰𝘷𝘦𝘳𝘢 Sonata and an etude, and then, without saying a word to anyone, I launched into Godowski transcription instead of the original, carried only by the irrational hope that the jury had already hit that tropical garden with the Riojas so hard that they wouldn't notice the difference. Well, apparently they didn't visit that garden, because while I was playing, actually quite successfully, something started brewing in the hall. The chairman of the competition, a well-known Spanish musician, was shocked by this mischief. He wanted to stop me from blasphemizing Albéniz right away. But another jury member, apparently lacking any moral decency, was quite happy to listen to such perversion and tried to convince the chairman to let me finish. Anyway, while they were fighting, I finished the piece, to tremendous success and an excited ovation from the audience. But what happened next was exactly what I expected, unfortunately. I was disqualified. Of course, a mid-range competition desperately trying to be a top-tier one is no place for creative experiments, and I was prepared to this decision, like no hard feelings. But the way they wrapped it was a little bit bizarre. So they paused the competition. They called me to the front lobby to disqualify me in front of the audience. The wording was especially memorable. The chairman of the competition, a very reputable Spanish professor, whose name, of course, I won't mention, because this is a story about me, not about mocking someone else. So even if you guys know who I'm talking about, please don't write his name in comments, because I'm not looking for revenge. I hold no grudge. So he said to me, "In your home country, young man, you can play Godowski, Moskovsky, any crap you want. But here in Spain, we want to hear authentic Spanish music." So he made it clear that the real issue wasn't that I hadn't informed them of a program change. My crime was in polluting and contaminating the pure Spanish spirit with lame Eastern European influences. And at that age, I didn't yet know myself, much less than I do now. Self-reflection was still a foreign concept. So until recently, when I finally recalled and processed this experience, I didn't even understand why I wasn't afraid, why I wasn't ashamed or frustrated by that public shaming and such a excited speech. It may sound strange, but I was exhilarated. I had so much fun watching this important man getting so upset and so angry with me. Now I get it. There's a part of me, one of my sub-personalities, that enjoys testing rigid social norms and takes a certain pleasure in watching people get seriously pissed off when I accidentally poke at that little cage of theirs. That's why it wasn't scary. It was thrilling to watch this self-important man, the guardian of Spanish musical purity, get so insulted and enraged by some Slavic teenager who dared to urinate in his holy grail of Spanish music.
How dare you!
After all, I'm very grateful that this 𝘤𝘷𝘦𝘗 confusion happened and that I didn't hesitate, didn't give up, and actually broke the rules and went on performing this transcription because I discovered a very precious part of myself. The part that isn't afraid of breaking dogmatic rules and isn't afraid of pissing certain people off. And that's a very important quality if you want to be successful in life, because every time you submit to someone's rigid rules, you lose a part of yourself. You lose a piece of your true potential until the point where you just do what society expects of you, always afraid of what will they think of me if I don't conform. On that same trip, another amazing, irrational thing happened. After the competition, after I was done with the competition, we went to visit Barcelona. And at one point, we stumbled upon the magnificent facade of the Palau de la Música Catalana, one of the most beautiful concert halls in the world. And I remember it very vividly. Standing in front of that building, a poor, unknown Ukrainian teenager, with only a couple of paid recitals in Eastern Europe behind me. And I said to myself, I don't know how, it sounds right impossible, but I must perform here with an orchestra. I will do it. And the thought was scary and intoxicating at the same time. If your dreams don't scare you, they're not big enough. It was exactly that kind of moment. A few years later, I returned to Barcelona and unexpectedly to myself won the extremely tough Maria Canals competition in Barcelona. I played the finals with orchestra in that hall, and again I played the Mozart 2 piano concerto in the same very hall the next season. And unlike the competition in Valencia, which disqualified me, the one in Barcelona took a great care of its winners. So they built a wonderful network with concert venues across Europe and even some concerts in Asia. And thanks to that victory, I went on play with many more orchestras in many more great halls. This is why it's so important to accept our stupidity, our mistakes, and our imperfections, because sometimes they are crucial milestones for reconnecting with our true selves. And that is one of the most important goals in life for me personally. It's not about prizes, victories, millions of followers, or becoming the best pianist of the century. Even if those things happen, they are just tools among other tools in service of the real goal, to live a full life and to cultivate as much integrity and depth in your soul as possible. So now let me finally play for you this beautiful piece, which has become so dear to me, not only because it helped me reconnect with an important part of myself, but most of all because it's an absolutely stunning piece of music, full of excitement and energy, teaching us to enjoy each moment of life. Yet, thanks to its darker, more dramatic passages, it's also profoundly moving. It reminds us that life is tragically short, and no matter how happy we are, each moment slips away into the past. There's a great beauty in the fluidity of life, but also a certain pain we must learn to accept. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for sharing this wild ride with me. And now, Isaac Albeniz, Triana, arranged by Leopold Godowski.